Nurcan Baysal, great to have you with us here on IOHR TV in Geneva. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
I'd like now to talk about Diyarbakir, which is your hometown, 7,000 years old, the heart of Mesopotamia, UNESCO protected, but after the bombardment in 2015 and 2016, it's now lying in ruins. You've taken it upon yourself to keep the Kurdistan story alive and to let people know what's really happening there. What's the latest that you can share with us?
Yeah, unfortunately, lots of people don't know really what's happening to my city. It's not only my city; it's most of the Kurdish cities in Turkey, Şırnak, Silopi, Cizre. That most of them are now in ruins. What happened in 2015 and 2016? As you know, we have the military curfews. When the peace process closed between the Turkish state and the Kurdistan Workers' Party in August 2015. The war began again, but this time the war was in the city centers. It is something that a different characteristic from the last 30 years, because in the last 30 years we had the war in the mountains, not in the city centers. So at the beginning we were shocked because we were not expecting, the war is with us, in our door, And then the state declared military curfews throughout all Kurdish cities. And sometimes these military curfews continued, like 3 months, 6 months. At the beginning, they were just a few days curfews. Then, in some cities, it began to have like 8 months military curfews. And in my city, Diyarbakir, at the December 2015, it was the fourth curfew. It was declared again, and we thought that it will, finish in a few days. But still, the curfew continues in Diyarbakir, and no one knows that it still continues. Also, in the tourist, it is the city center, the old city. We have the curfew still; it continues. There is no bombardment, no military operations, but we have the curfew. This year, the curfew finished the 4th year, and it is the longest curfew in the world. Sometimes people ask me, things like that. We also had curfews in our cities, things like that. But when I talk about the curfew in Turkey, it is a bit different because it is something that, with the curfew, when the government office declared the curfew, bombardment will begin. And days went under bombs and gunfire. And people couldn't go outside. Even you didn't go outside, still you can't die. For example, according to the statistics of Human Rights Foundations, more than 200 people died inside their homes because of the bombardment, because pieces of shrapnel hit their houses. And so you have limited food and water, and days passed like that. So it was very hard days. And then in my city, we had 100 days under bombardment. And at March 2016, the bombardment finished, so military operations finished. And then the city was, I am talking not about the whole city, I'm talking about the Sur, the old city, the main city center, which is under the UNESCO protection. It's a 7,000-year-old city. And it was in ruins. And then all big machines entered the old area, and they begin to demolish all the rest of them. And none of the international institutions, also UNESCO, said nothing. And today we don't have the half of the old city in Diyarbakir. It is the heart of the Mesopotamia. And now the state is establishing very ugly villas. We don't know why. And the curfew continues in that area.
Some of the stories that you told today at the UN were absolutely heartbreaking. You talked about children having their eyes gouged out, children thrown on fires, and you also shared a heartbreaking story of mothers who picked up their babies, their toddlers from the street and put their bodies in a refrigerator just to try and protect them. With stories like this, which are heartbreaking, and as a mother, it just makes me want to cry. The international community, what are they doing? Are they doing enough, and what do they need to do?
No, during that times we witnessed very, very hard war crimes and human rights violations. The international community, they did nothing, to be honest.
Nothing?
They did nothing, at that time, I went to Brussels also to talk with the European Parliament. I was moderating a conference about the Kurds, and I put my mobile on the phone, and I called the people who were trapped in the basements. And those people who were trapped in the basements directly talk, to European Parliament. I put my mobile because I was moderating, and I called them. And they said that we will die, they will kill us. And even that they did nothing. And those people who talked to European Parliament, after that talk, he was killed in 3 days after that talk. So because there is this thing, the word terror, so the government, the state says they are terrorists. And then, so lots of international organizations and people, they don't know, they don't want to also know. There were some people who are fighting against the state. There were some young people who were fighting against the state. This is true. But the thing is that these things may happen in many countries, but what will be the answer of the states? If you have, like, for example, in my city in Diyarbakir, we had like 18, 90 young people who have arms, and they were fighting against the state. Okay, so what should be the answer of the state? To bomb a city with all its citizens, or to take these people to the prison?
Mm-hmm.
What should be the answer? And they bombed all the city. Like 100 years we were under bombardment. And today, when we look the numbers, more than 320 people, they were only civilians. These are the numbers of civilians only were killed during the bombardment. So we need to talk about all these things. Can you think, for example, if we have the same thing in Berlin, about 100 young people that have arms, and they are fighting against the state. So the German, state will bomb the whole Berlin. We can't think all these things in Paris, in London, in Prague, in New York, but we can't think in my city.
The last Universal Periodic Review that put the spotlight on Turkey was 5 years ago. Many recommendations were made, none of them were kept. What do you hope this time will be achieved that wasn't achieved before?
I really don't know what can be achieved, but I know that all these things have some kind of effect. Maybe not big effects, but it affects, because when they know that someone is watching them, some international institutions are watching this country, what's happening to this country, what's happening to the people of this country. This is a pressure, and many people, maybe still outside, not in prison, because of this pressure. For example, just in my case, I know that I am out because of international pressure. I am sure, because of all these reviews may be affecting some lives. I'm not talking about big effects, but it has effect. So I think it's really important. It's also really important, for the citizens of Turkey that someone, and international institutions are dealing with it, because everyone feels so alone now in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So it is so important. If we can't speak, we should know that some other international institutions or some people outside, they are speaking for us. That's, I think, important, because today Turkey is like a big prison.
You've been detained, you've been threatened, you've been intimidated, your children have been frightened when the police came and practically knocked your door down late on a Sunday night.
Never finished.
Do you ever think, is it worth it?
Yeah, it is. It is always worth. Everyone, because when in the last home raid, I was in London. It was 3 months ago, and I was shocked. I was not expecting this time because I was not at home. So it seems that they knew it, because when I went, I wrote that I'm going and they are following me. And so they did it probably because they want to scare me by using my children. And it's a message to me not to return. And lots of people also told me, international organizations, human rights organizations, even some governments, they asked me not to return. And they want to give me asylum. I said, no, I want to return because this is what they want. And I, as a human being...
They want rid of you, they want you to go.
As a human being, we have right to live to have a life, a equal and a, just life in the place where we born. And I don't want them to take this from us. We are responsible, to record all these things to the history. Who will record this? If I don't tell this, I don't tell what's happening today in this conference, who will tell this? Who will write this? No one will write this. Because if we don't write, they will write. Because they have the power. They will write the history how they want to write, But now I'm also writing the counter history. Mm-hmm. So someone will know, maybe today we don't have the power to take these people to the court, But 10 years later, 20 years later, it's not important I'm here or not. But I'm recording what's happening with names, with, at what age they are, how they were killed, who killed. So I'm recording them all the time. So that's important.
Earlier today, I interviewed Ambassador Stephen Rapp, and he spoke about the importance of documents and evidence, but doing it in the correct way so that you can point towards war crimes in Syria, Turkey, wherever. How have you found documenting it? Has it been a difficult process for you?
To be honest, I'm alone doing in all these things because people don't want to do these things too much. It's a bit, now we have a fear society now. And so I'm trying to find my way alone. But usually, because I'm usually visiting those families, every month, Cizre, Şırnak, and those areas. So, recording by taking their voices, or some documents, or the pictures of dead bodies, all these things, I'm trying to record in my way, because I'm not, I was not a journalist. I began to write because no one was writing. So I found myself writing.
So you've learned as you've gone along, really.
I was a development, worker, working in evacuated villages. But then the war began, and people were dying, and no one was writing. So I found myself writing. It's like, sometimes, an accident happens, and how you will close your eyes. And you know that you can do something, and I knew that I can do something. So I began to write because of that, not the professional job. I began to journalism, just because people were not writing in Turkish media. So I found myself writing every day. Okay, today this happened. Today there is bomb here. Today this is the 35th bomb today in my city. This is that, and then I found myself that I'm increasing the voice of my people.
What could and should Turkey be doing as and from now?
I think the first thing is to bring the perpetrators of 2015 and 2016 military curfews to the court. I think this should be the first thing, because Kurdish people, their Kurdish citizens totally lost their trust after these military curfews to this state. And then to give the rights of Turkish people. And the first thing they can begin, for example, still we don't have education in mother tongue. Not only education in mother tongue. In many places, the Kurdish songs now banned in Turkey, and many things like that we have. Language is our everything now, and we are so afraid that we will lose our language. In the last 3 years, they appointed state trustees instead of our elected mayors. Okay, and the state trustees, banned everything about Kurdish. So today, nearly Kurdishness is banned in Turkey. So we want them to release all these, bans in front of Kurdish culture and Kurdish language. And the other thing, it is so important, our elected mayors, they are all in prison. So why we are voting them? And all our mayors, our elected representatives, they are in prison. We want to vote, for our representatives, and you are putting in prison. So why we are voting? I think this is so important. We want them to release all our representatives. And also there are thousands of Kurdish people in prisons, because of their thoughts. So I think it is so important, their situation. So,
Nurcan Baysal, we thank you for joining us today and sharing with us your story. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.